There isn't a single note in all of male perfumery that can lift a fragrance from here to here in terms of perceived quality. There is no note that does that better than iris, and that is why Dior grabbed onto iris, and for 15 years, that's all they made, was heavily iris-based fragrances. Then Givenchy realized what was going on, then Prada realized, and they all jumped in on iris. Iris is an extremely important note, especially in male perfumery. So today's list are my top 10 iris fragrances. This is a countdown list. I don't normally do that. There's two criteria: the best use of iris, in other words, high quality iris, and then how iris forward is the fragrance. So is iris very noticeable? Now, other than number 10 on this list, iris is very noticeable. You can definitely pick it up. Number 10 is a little bit tougher, but that's how I'm judging the criteria. So I am going from worst to best today. So let's get started. So the number 10 fragrance, even though the iris is harder to pick up than for the other fragrances, it definitely does not mean it's not an amazing fragrance. It is Jean-Paul Gaultier's Le Mâle, Le Parfum, and I think this was the number 1 fragrance on Fragrantica a couple years ago. So this is a fantastic fragrance. There is definitely iris here. I can pick it up on occasion, but it's not an iris heavy fragrance. It's actually not even a lavender heavy fragrance, and lavender is what ties this into the Le Mâle line. Really, this is like a sweet cardamom fragrance, a little bit of vanilla, and then a little bit of cardamom, the spiciness, the sweet spiciness goes back and forth. That's what this one does. You can pick up the iris on occasion, but it is more muted, so that's why it's so low on this list. This is Lalique Pour Homme. Lalique's a pretty inexpensive house, and this is a pretty masculine, woody fragrance. But then you get a whiff of the iris, and it's very noticeable, and you're like, whoa! It's like seeing a guy with a Hell's Angels jacket on in a biker bar walk out and step into a Mercedes. That was my experience with this. I tried it on for the first time. I'm like, whoa, that's heavy, heavy woods. And then I got the iris and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll reconsider. But this is definitely made a lot more accessible and more appealing with the iris note. Number 8 is somewhat similar to number 9, although this is a better overall fragrance to begin with. Versace The Dreamer. The Dreamer has a tobacco blossom note, which is not tobacco leaf. Normally, tobacco fragrances are tobacco leaf and some sweetness. So you get that sweet tobacco. Tobacco blossom is very different. It can almost come off as harsh on occasion. But it's mixed nicely with some herbal note. But this is really saved for me with the amount of iris and how good it is. There's a lot of iris in a pretty inexpensive fragrance, and it just kind of, the big wafts of iris kind of cover up all the potential problems that you could get with this from the tobacco blossom. The people that don't like this fragrance don't like the tobacco blossom, but I'll bet that people that like iris like this, because there's an awful lot of it for a fragrance that a year ago you could get for $30 at the discounters. Okay, number 7, it doesn't need any help from the iris. This is an unbelievable fragrance, iris or not. This is Reflection Man by Amouage. This is fairly low, mainly because, look, the iris is there. It's orris, which is iris, the root of the iris plant. It's actually harder to get and more expensive. It's definitely there. You can definitely pick up the iris, but this is just magnificence. You don't need any iris to be, this good. This is basically white florals and sandalwood blended together perfectly with some iris. It doesn't need the iris as much as some of the other ones on this list. The next one applies the same way too. This is Jora Mihail. This one has got so much going on. It is iris heavy though. It's heavier than just about anything on this list so far. But this is also a heavy, heavy leather fragrance. This is also a lot of oud and a lot of ambrette, which is like a mild sweetness. So there's, if you like oud, you'll like this. If you like leather, you'll like this. The iris in this is very heavy and very beautiful. But again, as good as the iris is here, it's not required as much to make it an amazing fragrance. Now the next one, it's lower on this list for me than for some other people. This is Valentino Uomo Intense. Now this is a very sweet iris. There's two types, in my mind, there's two types of iris. There's Givenchy iris, which is a sweeter iris, and then there's more of a powdery iris, which is more Dior and Prada, right? I prefer the more powdery. Some people prefer the more sweet. This is the more sweet version. However, it also has a ton of leather, like a ton. This is just as much a leather fragrance as anything. So, you know, I think there's just a little bit too much leather in this for me. The iris in this is a sweeter version. If you like Givenchy Gentleman, you'll probably really like this. Speaking of Givenchy Gentleman, this is Givenchy Gentleman EDP, and this is number 4. And the reason that I like this more, the Valentino is probably a better overall quality fragrance, but this doesn't have the degree of leather, and so this is still a pretty heavy iris fragrance and a really nice one. If you like sweet iris, this is my recommendation, my favorite. Although a ton of people love Valentino Uomo Intense, maybe they prefer the leather in it. I don't know, but yeah, this is really good. This is like their their bellwether fragrance. Okay, we're moving to Prada. This is number 3, and this is Prada L'Homme Intense. Now, I have to explain the sweetness debate here. This uses tonka, which is not quite as sweet as the vanilla used for these two. So there's tons of sweetness here. Tonka's a little bit less sweet. And I like that because then the iris stands out a little more. I like my sweet to be subtle when we're dealing with an iris fragrance. This also has leather. Boy, I'm smelling this now. This is a fantastic fragrance. Holy cow. This has leather as well, but nowhere near as much as the Valentino Uomo. And the tonka is you know, a toned down sweetness, which I like. Which actually leads into the number 2 and number 1. Actually, it's a tie. Prada L'Homme and Dior Homme Intense. And both of these have plenty of iris, but the sweetness is toned right down. Prada is expert at amber. Prada does amber really well. You'll see it very often in their men's fragrances. And so it's a subtle sweetness. It goes amber, tonka, vanilla, right? And this is amber. Now, Dior went with ambrette, which is more expensive and a little creamier. And so you've got that sort of subtle sweetness of the ambrette to go with the iris. What Dior adds to the equation is the creaminess mixed with the powderiness of the iris, the creaminess of the ambrette, and that makes a really cool contrast. Whereas this is tied because this is just all in on iris. It's just an iris bomb, you know, with the amber, subtle amber dry down, but it's just tons of iris. And if you want to know what iris is like, if you're curious now, if you've managed to watch this whole thing, yes, this is the best fragrance if you want to know what it's really all about. But anyway, hopefully there's something you like there. Iris is a very important note. I love it. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy.